Governor, thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of this discussion tonight. I've been fortunate to have had private discussions about policy issues with some of your competitors, but I'm very proud to be here tonight in this very public forum with you to discuss issues important to everyone, including gay and lesbian Americans. And first, thank you for having me, and look forward to a good discussion tonight. I'll just tell you for just a minute about our organization, GOProud. We're a 2-year-old organization based here in Washington, D.C. that represents gay conservatives and our allies. You know, we started out a couple of years ago with a premise that not all gay people are liberals and not all straight conservatives are anti-gay homophobes. So we have brought together conservatives, gay and straight, Republican and independent and libertarian around a vision of government that puts freedom first, to work to help to improve the lives of all Americans, including gay and lesbian Americans. And we work on a broad-based agenda, work on almost every issue representing our issues here in Washington, and we certainly share a lot of the same pro-freedom, pro-liberty positions that you share, and I look forward to talking with you about some of those issues tonight.
I would like to just start off by saying that I'm, after a lot of thought and having had so many discussions all across the country regarding the issue of gay marriage and gay unions, that I'm just going to be a supporter flat out of gay marriage from this point forward. I absolutely support economic and personal freedom. I'm from the Libertarian wing of the Republican Party, and I think that this is really an issue of equality, and that it's best addressed by just allowing marriage by gay individuals, if that so be their choice. So maybe we'll start off and we'll get into questions. And Jimmy, please feel free to chime in. But let's start off with questions this evening.
Well, first, Governor, just if I may, let me say congratulations and thank you on that great position. You know, it was an enormous federal power grab when Congress passed and President Bill Clinton signed the Defense of Marriage Act back in the 90s. And I'm glad to know that if you're elected, that you would sign the repeal of DOMA and return marriage and family law to its traditional home in the states. And so congratulations on that position, and I commend you for making that statement tonight. Thank you.
Well, and just speaking from the standpoint of a citizen of this country, we all have associates that are gay, and we have associates that are heterosexual, and this is a country of equality. This is a country of freedom, and to deny that to anyone is really un-American and unconstitutional. So I look forward to attempting to articulate this in the best way possible, and tonight will maybe be a big step in that direction. So let's start off with Emil.
Question that I asked is on cyberbullying. Should the police be allowed to get involved in cases not involving death threats or identity theft? As in, if someone is just throwing around insults, is that a legal case?
No, I think we're absolutely embarking on new territory here, and it's not for the better, it's for the worse. And I'm just afraid that these precedents of not involving death threats or identity theft, that there's going to be a lot of line crossing when it comes to those issues that really are going to involve just you and I in our daily lives being monitored by the government. And this is the direction that should be reversed.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Steve Cosell. New study found cannabis for medical purposes reduces alcohol consumption and traffic death. Legal for personal use? Yes, I think marijuana should be legal for personal use, and I've always maintained that that in no category is marijuana more dangerous than alcohol. And of course, it's never going to be legal to smoke pot, become impaired, and get behind the wheel of a car, but that ought to be the focus. And I've always maintained that legalizing marijuana will actually lead to less overall substance abuse, because people that currently use alcohol might find marijuana as a much safer alternative. Sherry Hooper has a text question. How long after you're sworn in as President of the United States will cannabis be decriminalized? Months, days, and months. Well, if I am elected President of the United States, what are the American people shouting at Congress when it comes to drug reform? I think what they're shouting is that we should legalize marijuana and that we should come up with a rational drug policy, which really looks at drugs first from a health issue rather than a criminal justice issue, looks at drugs being decriminalized. And so I can't promise that will happen as President of the United States, because that will require congressional authorization to go along with my stand. But I'm just going to argue that that's the American people shouting that they want change when it comes to our marijuana laws. 4 weeks ago, Gallup came out with a poll that said 50% of Americans now support legalizing marijuana. This is an issue that does really well when people talk about it. So as President of the United States, I will be running the Drug Enforcement Administration. I think that at a minimum, you can look for less Drug Enforcement Administration than ever before. Let's give this issue back to the states where it's ultimately going to be decided. But the decision is on the wall, and that is that we will legalize marijuana, and it will be sooner than later. And Tammy Rainey, I would like to hear the governor agree that transgender people are likewise in need of full equality, just like gays. Yes, Tammy, I agree that is the case. Transgender people are just as in need of full equality as gays.
I'll just add to that. Here at GOProud, we hear from transgender people all the time on a lot of issues. One issue particular that we hear about, I think, just from our perspective, from transgender people the most, is when we talk about gun rights and the ability for all Americans to lawfully defend themselves. And there's absolutely no question that some people are a target of violent crimes, whether they're gay or transgendered or for any number of reasons. And we certainly believe, and I know that you believe, that folks should be able to lawfully defend themselves. And would like to hear you, Governor, talk about gun rights for just a minute.
Well, gun rights. I absolutely unequivocally support the Second Amendment. Your and my rights to be able to carry firearms, and that would be for defense. So I'm not the guy who's going to get up and argue for more or for less bullets in the clip. Whenever I see any of these atrocities that do happen nationally, I always think, gosh, if there was someone who just had that same ability to come back and stop the violence, that we'd have less violence. As governor of New Mexico, I did sign a bill that authorized concealed carry. In New Mexico, it has always been legal to carry guns openly, but it was my belief that that would actually lead to less overall crime. because the question of who was carrying would be in the minds of anybody that was going to break the law, and that it would reduce people from committing violent crime. And I think that that has borne itself out over the last 10 years. Guy, you're up.
Hi there. Hello, Gary. Is there any possibility you'll be able to attend a LP presidential debate in Houston on December the 17th?
Gosh, if that's an invitation, I would love to. I'd love to see if we could make that work. I'm not sure. I am still a candidate for president on the Republican ticket, but I am absolutely potentially viewing the ability to do this as a libertarian, believing in the message, believing that perhaps libertarians have it more right than anyone else, and if I should choose to do that, I don't take it for granted at all in any way. I realize that if that is a path that I take, that I would go out and work very hard to try and be a very good spokesperson on behalf of the Libertarian Party. I happen to believe that the Libertarian wing of the Republican Party is the fastest growing segment of the Republican Party, but I have really, in my opinion, been locked out of the presidential debate. I've been in 2 of the 16 presidential debates, and those have a self-fulfilling prophecy, and so my message has not been heard, and I, from my experience now out on the road for the last 2 years, it is a message that resonates. So I hope to be there, Guy. We'll see what we can do. Thank you.
Thank you.
David, you're up.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I have had a question, please. This is for both of you gentlemen. It's concerning the marriage issue that's been ongoing for gays and lesbians and transgender folks. And I'm just curious from the standpoint of asking, and this is how I approach the question, as an evangelical Christian, we pronounce marriage between a man and a woman, etc., and we're working for equality and trying to bring in and encompass those who wish to be married that don't ascribe to those views. And I'm wondering how you feel about rephrasing the terminology of marriage to something to the effect of civil unions. And I was wondering how both of you gentlemen felt about that, and if you would be open to that idea. Thank you.
You know, I'll turn it over here to Jimmy in a second, but one thing that I've come to recognize is that I've always said up till this evening that I support civil unions as opposed to marriage. I'm now supporting gay marriage, and one of the reasons that I am is I've found that to change the law, you'd virtually have to go back and change every single law when it comes to marriage and change those. And Jimmy, I'm going to ask you to clarify what I'm saying, right, wrong, or expound on it. But that by endorsing civil unions by the government, you're going to make this a really hard process for the government to go back and dot all the I's and cross all the T's to change these laws that are on the books. Whereas if gay marriage is just simply allowed, that won't be the case, and it will be much more easily accommodated. Jimmy, I'll turn that to you.
I think that that's a very valid point. A couple of things there, David. First, so many people, I think, have it when we're talking about civil marriage, we're talking about a partnership that the government recognizes. We're not talking about the religious sacrament. And every church, every synagogue, any denomination is free to bestow that sacrament on any couple they choose to. I mean, now, you can't, in many churches, there can't be interdenominational marriages or any other, or a variety of types of intermarriages that churches already sanction or not sanction. The question here is, about what the civil contract is going to be. And like it or not, there are thousands of laws, well, there's over 1,000 instances where the government refers to marriage or a married couple. And traditionally, the federal government recognized what happened in the states. So we believe that we should go back to that, get the federal government out of determining who should get married and allow the states to determine that. But at the end of the day, the religious sacrament will always be determined in the religious institution. And frankly, then it's up to the state to recognize that religious sacrament, not the other way around. Religions don't have to recognize what the state recognizes. That's just the truth of the matter. So it's almost a reverse situation than most people think it is. So let me just add that the bottom line on that, whether it's called marriage or civil unions or what have you, there are so many things that the government does that should treat all couples equally. You know, one thing that the governor talked about in his last town hall was fundamental tax reform. You know, many of the ways that the government picks winners and losers is through the tax code. And gay couples have always been the losers in that. And so one of the things I like that the governor likes also is the fair tax, fundamental tax reform, that everyone, regardless of your marital status or anything else, is treated the same. You know, I'm appalled that we give tax breaks or treat any American differently based on anything when it comes to taxation. You know, whether it's corporate loopholes and taxes or individuals or whoever, I think we should treat everyone the same. And frankly, I think fundamental tax reform in the form of the fair tax is one of the most pro-gay positions you can take. And thank you, Governor, for taking that position.
Very good. Cliff, you're up.
Thank you, Governor.
There we go.
You actually just, that took care of my question, frankly, pretty much.
What's your question?
Well, about the fair tax eliminating the tax benefit for marriage. And then Governor Johnson in previous statements mentioned about the marriage back to the church. And I believe, Jimmy, what you just stated pretty much clarified that for me, because I've been kind of confused on that, frankly. And the fact of separating the sacrament from the legal position for the state brings clarity there for me. But Jimmy, a question for you to just expound a little bit on that. In the event that I just would wonder if there would be issues from the gay community if marriage did become sanctioned by the federal government and a church refused to marry a couple, if it would open the door for hate crimes and these sort of things that may come as a result of that.
Well, I think, like I said before, that never before in any other subject has the church been forced to perform a marriage on anybody. Right. It's up to the members of that denomination to lobby their leadership and determine whether that they would recognize gay unions. And so I don't think that what the government does would have any bearing on what the different denominations would do. I mean, maybe you would see some denominations, because their membership would demand it, change, but that would be a discussion that happens in their own churches and in their own communities where it should happen. You know, I can tell you one thing right now. The last place where marriage needs to be decided is, we're just a couple of blocks from the United States Capitol over here, and the last people who need to determine who should get married and who shouldn't are the people who work in that building. We all know what their record on marriage is. It's not any better than Hollywood. And so by returning it to the states and getting it out of the federal government's business, then communities and the country can have that discussion.
Thank you. John, I guess you're up.
Thank you, Governor. My question is, I guess, in regards to the Stop Online Piracy Act and the similar Protect IP Act. I hope you're familiar with that. And I guess my general question is, what is the federal government's role in protecting copyright on the internet? And do you see the internet as something that the federal government should police? Is it technically feasible to police? And do you think if they did try to do that, that they would have a negative impact on Silicon Valley and so forth?
I've just always found that all this kind of legislation usually has unintended consequences. And where this legislation starts out as protecting us against piracy and protecting intellectual property, ends up protecting really corporate interests as opposed to protecting you from with the intellectual property that you've developed. So I just know how complex these issues are, and for the most part, I'm always the contrarian when it comes to these issues, from the standpoint that it actually ends up, like I say, when it comes to intellectual property. I know that decisions of late have been made that intellectual property or that copyright can be based on thought as opposed to actually building something. Well, it seems to me that building something should take precedence over thought. And John, maybe you can clarify if I'm hitting this on the head or not. I'm just very, very fearful that that all these kinds of legislation really protect big business interests as opposed to the notion of equality. And I think that that's what the party should stand for, is equality, and making certain that you and I have the same advantages of a big business that can afford to file hundreds, if not more, copyrights on intellectual property.
Yeah, I think that does clarify. I think my question's a little broad, but that does help me. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Shay?
Hey, Shay. So why should Governor Johnson be interested in sticking around the GOP since they worked so hard to exclude him? I think that he should be in the debates, and I think that he should be. I'm not sure when the next nationally televised debate is. I believe it's December 15th in Sioux City, and I hope that Fox News lets him participate in that debate. I am certainly a member of the Republican Party who supports his inclusion in all the debates. But I'll tell you one thing. This country is great in that anybody can get on the ballot, and we're fortunate that the governor is on the ballot in the early states, and I saw him recently in New Hampshire, and I know he's working hard there. And getting out there asking for votes is how you win a party's nomination, and I'm glad to see him doing that, working for our party's nomination.
Well, and I also would just add that I really think that the Republican Party has not stood up for me, that they've just kind of left me hanging in the wind, and that they should be standing up for the fact that if the criteria for being in a debate is a particular showing in a poll, that I should at least be in that poll. And that's the rub that I have right now, is that I'm being excluded from polls that determine who gets in the debate, making it impossible for me to be able to be in these debates. No, the Republican Party hasn't done me any favors at all. Becky.
Hello. Can you please give an example
We can hear you.
of something you've done as governor that demonstrates how you would be successful in reforming Wall Street?
Well, when it comes to Wall Street, there were no criminal prosecutions when it came to Wall Street. The reason that there were no criminal prosecutions, let me just guess, maybe there wasn't any criminal activity. What there was there was some incredibly bad decision-making that should have been rewarded with failure. All these people, all these really smart bankers should have gone bankrupt for the decisions that they made. But the outrage is that you and I bailed them out, and they're still getting bonuses, and that is outrageous. And so I think the reform of Wall Street coincides with the reform of Washington and politicians, and that is that this country's up for sale. You want to buy influence, whether you're an individual, whether you're a group, or whether you're a corporation, you can do just that. This is not a country of equality. It's not a level playing field. And as governor of New Mexico, everything I did was about this notion of level playing field and that we would all have equal access to that. So I saw these kinds of legislation that were labeled more competitive telecommunications bill. Well, it was anything but more competitive. It really favored those that were already in the business, would have made competition less likely, and would have cost us more money. So I stood up to that and vetoed that. So successfully reforming Wall Street, in my opinion, is let's make the money really transparent. Who's paying the money and who's getting the money. And if you follow the money, I think what you'll find is that we continue to sell it for those that buy it, and that shouldn't be the case. I think that by enacting the fair tax, we take giant steps toward equality, that we're going to do away with all existing federal tax, income tax, corporate tax, no more withholdings out of your payroll check, no more IRS. In my opinion, a lot of this undue influence buying goes away.
Governor, I think that if you follow some of that money, you'll follow it directly into the pockets of some of your competitors for the nomination, don't you? There's something to be said for someone like yourself who has. Go ahead.
And what it ends up perpetuating, what is the status quo? And the status quo is we're really not going to change anything when things need to be changed drastically to equality. Changing it back to making us all equal, as opposed to this unlevel playing field that economically certainly exists for businesses or groups that pay for it. Ryan, you're up.
Nice to see you again, Governor Johnson.
Ryan Cole.
Yep. Why don't you personally challenge other candidates to online debates on here?
That's something that we do all the time. We don't have any success at it at all. I just get back to the 16 debate that have been held on national TV. Being excluded from 14 of those debates has really been a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's like I'm not even in the race. When you're in the debates, fundraising goes way up. Interest, attention on the message goes way up. And so there's no reason for any of those candidates to debate me online because they don't have to.
Gotcha. Yeah, I was kind of offended. Yahoo doesn't have a web page to you all either. I was kind of upset with that.
Hi.
Armand.
Can you hear me? Hi, how are you?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
So my question is, what is your opinion on the police force that has been used on the UC campuses recently, and what will you do in office to help protect our First Amendment right to peaceful protests and other things?
Armand, is this, when you speak of UC campus, is this something that happened today with the Occupy movement?
No, not specifically today. Just the past couple of weeks, the police force, like the pepper spray incident at UC Davis, and as well as like some police pushing back students with batons at UC Berkeley.
police shouldn't be using force when it comes to your and my rights to be able to express our opinions about different things. I've come to recognize that oftentimes issues that need to be expressed sometimes get thwarted by police, those in authority, and that is not what this country is about. What this country is about is our equal rights to be able to go out and do that. I absolutely support economic and personal freedom. And First Amendment is personal freedom to be able to express your opinions.
Thank you. I'd also like to add that I've been in contact with Forrest Baker, and we're hoping to try to get you to come eventually to California. And I think it'd be really beneficial if you did talks at the UC campuses, because I think a lot of students would, like to hear what you have to say.
Good. We'll make sure to get out there again. Probably been to California in the last 2 years, probably about 30 times, and was very involved in Proposition 19, believing that may have been the domino nationally to bring about marijuana reform. I think now the best chance for that lies in Colorado, where it is on the ballot for 2012 to legalize marijuana. And so I think that right now has the best chance to bring that about. But been to California many times, and I think California has a history of really leading when it comes to civil rights movements. Niles, you're up.
Hello. Thanks for coming on again. My question for you is regarding, you've mentioned before that gay rights may very well be like a civil rights issue, as racial discrimination was. Would you, as president, possibly push for federal involvement, like making it to where people are unable to discriminate against someone because of their sexual preference? Just as we had to do, unfortunately, since people were discriminated against for their race.
Yes, I think that this may be on par, that it is a civil rights issue, and that may justify federal involvement. You'd like to think it belongs. I absolutely believe that it belongs in the states, but if it belonged in the states, would there still be a state today that maintains slavery, for that matter, if not having been made a federal issue? Like I say, I have changed my position from supporting gay unions to just outright support of gay marriage, believing first and foremost in equality, and the notion that this can get done much easier and more effectively without a change in the language of virtually every law in Washington, that by equally recognizing gay marriage, that this can be brought about much more quickly with less cost, and making it happen.
Thank you. And I definitely agree with you about the Colorado issue. We're definitely going to do it first next year for legalizing marijuana.
Good.
Thank you,
Niles, I'd just like to add that he's absolutely right, that from a federal government perspective, the number one thing that Congress and the president can do is to repeal the Defense of Marriage Act. As far as other things go, there's a case to be made that since other groups are protected, then why not add gay people? But in terms of political priorities, the question is how many people are really affected. And, I happen to be of the belief that we don't have a position on the Employment Non-Discrimination Act, for example. I don't happen to believe it should be a priority of the gay community. I think that the Defense of Marriage Act is the piece of legislation that affects the most day-to-day lives of gay couples. I think that the market and certainly public relations has had a bigger impact on employment discrimination than the government could ever have. Just try to fire somebody because they're gay, and watch your business be affected from the PR nightmare. I think that there are so many other pieces of federal legislation that could actually help the day-to-day lives of most gay Americans that should be where the priority is placed. Just like, I mean, there are things that you wouldn't even think about, like free market health care. When we take the employer and the government out of the health care decisions and put the power of purchasing health care into the individual's hands and allow them to go on the market and buy across state lines and put tax credits together with their partner to find a plan that fits them, then they don't have to rely on whether the federal government or their employer offer domestic partner benefits, for example, or in Social Security savings, or in Social Security reform, when we talk about putting private accounts as part of Social Security reform, so individuals can designate whoever they want as their beneficiary, whether they're gay or not. There are so many things that can help the day-to-day lives of gay people that should be the priority of the gay community.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Kevin, I guess you're up.
What would you like to see done in relation to further the protection of the environment? And second question would be, how would the EPA be part of that?
So from my experience as governor of New Mexico, when it came to environmental issues, really what you had two extremes usually. One was the, for lack of a better term, polluters on one side and absolutely extreme environmentalists on the other. And I found that when it came to every single issue regarding the environment is that, first of all, when it comes to the extreme environmentalists, we've made a footprint on the earth. We have, and we can't erase that footprint. On the other side, there are polluters, but for the EPA, I don't know as they wouldn't continue to pollute. I mean, government has a responsibility to protect us against individuals that would do us harm, whether that be from a property standpoint or physical harm. I think government has a role to protect us against businesses that would do the same. There are polluters that do that. So environmental issues always seem to end up in the middle, and that's a good thing. I mean, both sides compromising, and by compromise, there's no compromise to clean air and clean water. There is no compromise. But in getting to that point, EPA often dictates ways that are just out of bounds, I think, when it comes to common sense. Both sides do the same. Ends up being in the middle. You know, I'm, as President of the United States, I am promising to submit a balanced budget to Congress in the year 2013. That is going to document a 43% reduction in federal spending. There's some places I'd like to do away with, some areas I'd like to do away with completely. Other areas, 43% reduction, I think, would just bring it in line. It would just correct the largesse, if you will, that I think exists in government. I would be proposing a 43% reduction in the Environmental Protection Agency, believing that it can still do a very effective, if not more effective, job with that much less money. But I am advocating a balanced budget, and would propose that in 2013 if I was President of the United States. All right, next. How are you this evening?
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
I'm doing great. Just actually popped out of my grad school class. I'm in Richmond, Virginia. I'm a marketing student, so I'm actually doing a little campaign project for you, theoretically, how I could get you to sway some voters. But in any event, my question for you is, how do you plan on taking the current status quo of marijuana stance in the United States and transition that to your policies without disrupting or creating any waves in terms of the DEA and other huge federal agencies that depend on this current status?
Well, first of all, if I'm elected President of the United States, that is America shouting that we want drug reform in this country. Drug reform starting with the notion of looking at drugs first as a health issue rather than a criminal justice issue. I've espoused the legalization of marijuana since 1999. 4 weeks ago, Gallup poll, 50% of Americans support legalizing marijuana. This is an issue that does really, really well when you shine light on it, when people talk about it. So one of the issues that I do talk about running for president is marijuana and making it legal, control it, regulate it, tax it. I think the more people talk about it, the closer that becomes comes to being reality. In 2012, I think we can really look to Colorado and the initiative that's on the ballot, which would be an outright legalization of marijuana, as what I call the first domino to fall among the 50 states. This is going to be a 50-state issue, just like alcohol. It's going to be 50 different states dealing with how they go about legalizing marijuana. And of course, there will be those states that won't do it, but I think there will be a lot of tourism that will result, and a lot of opportunity, and of course a lot of jails that won't have to be filled with people that basically are selling small amounts of drugs that have been thrust into the selling role because the person ahead of them got arrested and sent to jail, and we've become very, very effective at that. So I just really think that that the whole marijuana issue has reached a tipping point, and that within the next few years we're going to see this tipping point nationally, all 50 states. That's my opinion. Anthony asks a text question: how would you act to curtail TSA? As President of the United States, I would have never established Homeland Security. I think that it's incredibly redundant, and because I would have never established the Department of Homeland Security, nor would I have ever sanctioned TSA. I would have left airport security to the airports and to the airlines, and I think today that airport security would be as safe and less intrusive. And if you leave airport security to the airlines, maybe some airlines will opt for a complete strip down. That will be your choice as a passenger. For me, I would just as soon go through the minimal amount of security that I have to go through. That would be my choice. That would be the airline that I would choose to fly. Let's recognize that soon after 9/11, we beefed up the cockpit doors, which effectively brought an end to using an airplane as a missile ever again. And then most importantly of all, you and I as passengers, we just don't sit by idly and watch bad behavior on an airplane anymore. Nobody tolerates that at all, and that's probably the most important thing that has happened since 9/11. Jonas.
Hi, Governor. My question concerns the 2012 National Defense Authorization Act, just passed in the Senate today, which among other things contains a provision that, and I'm reading here, this is news, so it's just, it's not being reported very well yet, but it implements a provision where someone who the government maintains as a member of or part of Al-Qaeda or an associated force can be held in military custody without trial until the end of the hostilities authorized by the authorization for use of military force. In effect, allowing American citizens as well as foreign combatants to be held indefinitely by the military. What's your position on this?
Jonas, based on what you just said and what you've written down here, I would veto this legislation. I think that this is not what this country is about. And when we talk about Guantanamo, what needs to be brought to an end are the practices in Guantanamo that are allowing for indefinite detainment without charge and torture. Both of those acts need to be stopped and not codified in legislation.
Thank you, Governor.
Thank you.
Oh my God, I'm on.
Paul.
Hey, Paul.
Hello. Are you going to the Homocon?
Governor,
No, I have no idea what that is.
Governor, I'll tell you. You, as were at our party in February that we had with Andrew Breitbart and Sophie B. Hawkins back here in Washington, and we haven't really had an event in Washington since then. And on Monday, this coming Monday the 5th, we're having an event called Ho Ho HomoCon, and it's our Christmas party, and you're more than welcome to attend, and certainly everyone out there who's watching this, we'd love to have you go to our website, GOProud.org, GOProud.org, and you can sign up and pay a little bit of money to come and celebrate the holidays with us. We've got some famous people who are coming, and you'll recognize lots of them. And we certainly, Governor, if you're in Washington on Monday, please stop by. We'd love to have you.
All right. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Jimmy. And I will not be in Washington on Monday, but thanks for the invite. Dan, you're up.
Hello, Governor. What would you do to make school more affordable for students, college specifically?
So Dan, I'll just throw it out here for everybody. What's the main reason why higher education is so expensive in this country? Well, the reason is that government has guaranteed student loans, and because it's guaranteed student loans, higher education really is immune from competition. They're immune from bringing their prices down, which if there weren't so many students that wanted to go to college and were afforded that ability because of being able to borrow the money from the government, guaranteed student loans, prices for higher education would be much lower. I am not suggesting that we should do away with student loans, but I think you as students should stand up to the fact that we're just not gonna go to school if it's gonna cost this amount of money. And if students did that in unison, costs would come down because costs are artificially high because you can get a student loan guaranteed by the government, which you can't escape from. And now we've got an entire generation of students, unlike me, who are graduating with a mortgage, with a house mortgage over your head, just getting out of school. I am sorry for your plight monetarily because of student loans and the high cost of higher education because of that. Let's see, Troy. Governor, what are your thoughts on citizen detainment by the military? Really, this is not something that the military should be involved in, and I'm afraid that this is one of those issues that keeps creeping in more and more and more as opposed to less and less and less. Jack Ryan.
Hello, Governor. How are you?
I'm good.
Thank you. My question was, I noticed the difference between you and Ron Paul is that you're for more legalizing marijuana, like as opposed to legalizing all drugs, which it seems like what Ron Paul's stance is. I just wanted to know the difference between the two of you.
Well, I've advocated legalizing marijuana since 1999. I think that we're really close to legalizing marijuana. And that when we do that, I think as a nation, we really take giant strides toward rational drug policy, which starts with looking at the drug problem as a health issue rather than a criminal justice issue. It starts with the notion that these may be bad choices, but that they're not criminal choices. So really, the notion of decriminalizing drug use, that is something in the overall scheme of things that if we will start as a nation with marijuana, I think we're going to find ourselves quickly in a rational discussion regarding the rest of drug policy, and then the notion that, yes, decriminalizing all drugs would be a much, much better situation than what we have today. But we have an opportunity here with marijuana. Part of it has to do with the economy, be able to regulate it, tax it. I would argue along the same lines as alcohol, and that we can stop arresting 1.8 million people a year in this country on drug-related crime. That would be really, really positive. So I don't know, as Ron Paul and I are different at all. Maybe we're talking about it in different ways, but we certainly have the same outcome, I think, in mind.
Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, Governor. Looks like I'm back on. My question is regarding Sharia law. By what I've heard, it's supposed to basically the law for Muslim religion. It basically takes away women's rights, kind of makes them property. And as we've seen on the news, like women are now fighting in Middle Eastern countries simply just to be able to drive without a man with them. As president, what would you do to protect the rights of women who follow Muslim religion? And would you do anything to possibly stop the implementation of Sharia law so that way it doesn't take away the rights of other people?
Well, if you're talking about a Muslim woman living in the United States, Sharia law is not something that would dictate that woman's way of living. That woman would be dictated by the United States Constitution. If you're talking about what would I do, how would I promote women's rights across the world, I think that that's what the United States has always been about, is being the shining example, being the example that other countries would aspire to. I just think that we've gone so far over the line with our offense when it comes to national foreign policy that we've become, we're looked at now as the bully as opposed to the country that stood up against the bully.
I guess like another offshoot of that question would be like, what would you do like if, say, a group, like a large Muslim group tried to implement that here? Would you allow that to happen since it is technically freedom of their religion, or would you try to take steps to, get people to not implement a law like that out here?
You're not going to implement that kind of law in the. I really don't know how it would apply to other issues, but I could certainly see that within the context of the Muslim religion that you would adhere to a creed, if you will, as do religions. But Sharia law is never going to supersede the laws of the United States, and I don't see this as something that's going to happen. And I don't believe it is a threat, if you will, to our way of life in this country.
If I could just chime in on that general subject, I believe, and many of us gay conservatives believe, that the greatest threat to gay people worldwide is the spread of radicalized Islam, and many world leaders have spoken out against the way some brutal dictators, really of any religion, have treated gay people in the world and women. But our president hasn't. Last year, when the United Nations met, and one world leader after another went to the lectern to talk about Ahmadinejad and that regime's treatment of women and religious minorities in Iran, only Bibi Netanyahu spoke out against their treatment of gays. And recently, David Cameron in the UK has made human rights treatment and treatment of women and gay people around the world a key point in their foreign policy. And I hope that all the Republican candidates for president will know that that should be a key point of their foreign policy, to speak out and to, as the governor said, lead by example and show the world that treatment of women, religious minorities, gay people is not a vision of the world that puts freedom first. So,
thanks, Jimmy. Adrian, text question. would you challenge the current status quo that corporations triumphs over people's rights? I guess what you're referring to here is the fact that corporations can provide unlimited contributions to candidates, much like unions can do the same. I just think that that this issue, if this is what you're talking about, is 100% transparency. That when it comes to campaign finance reform and the ability of individuals or corporations to make contribution, that it shouldn't have a limit on it, but that it should be 100% disclosed, something that does not exist today. As a corporation today or an individual, you can give money to a political candidate by giving to his or her super PAC as opposed to them directly, and the money really doesn't get tracked directly, and that's what needs to take place. I've said this tongue-in-cheek many times, but if candidates or sitting politicians had to wear jackets similar to NASCAR drivers with patches on their jackets commensurate with the amount of donation that came from the sponsor, I think that would add a lot of transparency to why things happen the way they happen. Let's see, Melvin.
How are you doing,
Thank
Governor?
you. Thanks for being on.
Yeah, I haven't seen you for a little while since we last talked when you were in Salt Lake.
Yeah, so your question, since we talked last, how has your views on marriage equality changed? Just that marriage equality should exist, I'm changing my position from supporting gay unions to supporting gay marriage. That it's really about equality. That's what this country is all about. I support economic and personal freedom, period. And so bringing about marriage equality can best be done. And Melvin, it may have been my conversation with you that enlightened me to just how difficult it would be to change existing law to support civil union as opposed to not having to change existing law but clarify marriage, that it gets done much quicker and brings about that equality in a better way, if you will.
Yeah, it all stems on that word. Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
Nolan, I just want to tell everybody who's watching that you do great work in Salt Lake City and in the state of Utah as an out gay Republican and someone who's run for office as an openly gay Republican. And I just commend your work there and want everybody who's watching across the country to know that you do great work there in Salt Lake City.
Well, thank you, Jimmy. That's very nice of you. Going on that marriage issue, changing one word, calling it civil union, calling it anything else, it's a real hard thing to change all of the federal laws, let alone all those state laws. Going on that marriage issue, changing one word, calling it civil union, calling it anything else, it's a real hard thing to change all of the federal laws, let alone all those state laws, to try and put those terms and legal definitions in place where just accepting marriage as the legal term fits the whole bill and takes care of the whole problem. So I appreciate that, Governor. Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks for spending time with me to educate me on that when I was in Salt Lake.
Hi, how are you, Governor?
I'm good. Mel, how about you?
Very good. Well, what's your position on allowing more studies for medicinal marijuana in our country? I know we have Oaksterdam in Northern California, but what is your position on that? How do you go about doing that for our country?
Well, I don't think that that's something that the president could dictate, but electing me president of the United States, I think that is the American people shouting that we want to legalize marijuana. And when we legalize marijuana, in my opinion, universities we'll be offering all sorts of courses on medical marijuana, the effects of marijuana. There's going to be all sorts of studies, university studies on impairment, which is all good. I mean, this is how we're going to advance regarding this issue. It's never going to be.
Do you feel that? Yes. When people compare marijuana to alcohol and the prohibition, it's hard for me to kind of correlate the two because I believe it is a medicine. I use it as far as my religion. It's helped me. It's cured a lot of my illnesses, and I think providing that information to our country, educating them on what marijuana can do for you health-wise, I believe would help for your vote. Because right now, 50% of the population is for marijuana, but there's a lot of people that are still against it because they are not educated enough and they don't know what benefits it does. I mean, it does slow down cancer growth. It's helped my brother. He's had 8 back surgeries, and they've put him under the knife so many times, and I want to help cure him with medicinal marijuana, but I do have that fear if I start becoming a caregiver for him, what the laws are right now. It's still up in the air, and I don't want to jeopardize my own life or my my family as well.
I share that completely. I share that notion that you should not be criminalized for wanting to help. And as I mentioned earlier, in no category is marijuana more dangerous than alcohol. I have since 1999 advocated legalizing marijuana for recreational use. And believe that this country becomes a much better place overnight as a result of law enforcement going out and enforcing real crime as opposed to victimless crime. So thank you. Really appreciate everybody being online, and we're raising a little bit of money tonight. Thank you very much. It'll really go a long way toward delivering this message, and I think the message is first and foremost, and I happen to think that I'm also the messenger, that I think I do a good job of actually communicating these issues, and I don't think there's anything in my resume to suggest that whatever I talk about, I'm not going to go out and doggedly pursue. But if you're online and haven't checked me out, why, do go online, GaryJohnson2012.com. So now we'll go to Donald. And Donald, I guess this is a text question. I was convicted of a marijuana felony. If marijuana is legalized, could this be forgiven? Yes, it can be forgiven and should be forgiven. And I will tell you that as governor of New Mexico, I made the statement that I would actually commute anyone's sentence in jail who is just there because of drug use and nothing more. I was able to actually commute the sentences of 2 individuals that were in prison. But when it came to pardons, I reviewed hundreds of pardons and probably, this is not official, but probably gave out hundreds of pardons for drug crimes that had been committed, that the sentences had been served, and now I was offering a pardon as a result of all of that happening, and did. Melvin, you're up.
What is it going to take to get you on the debate floor and in the primaries?
Well, the debates, the issue with the debates is that I have been excluded from the polls that determine who gets into the debates. That's the rub. The last Fox debate that I was in, Fox chose to interpret the rules as the last 5 national polls where my name was in the poll. I thought that was eminently fair. And when you're not in the poll to determine who gets in the debate, that's the issue that I face. So There are just a handful of debates left. I think there are only 3 left before New Hampshire. I'm hoping to get into them, but at this point, there's no reason to believe that I will, given this exclusion. And I'll also tell you, Melvin, that 3 weeks ago I qualified for the CNBC poll, which was 3% in any national poll, which I was in a Gallup poll in May, and then be registered to run for president. Well, on their 2 criteria, I qualified for their debate, and they would not return my calls. So this has been very, very frustrating, and I feel really stiff-armed by the Republican Party for not standing up and saying to the media, look, if you're going to hold a debate, you better have polls that determine who gets in the debate to contain, in this case, my name. Text question from Jared. What's your opinion of WikiLeaks? And if you were president, would you pardon Bradley Manning or work for his release? You know, I'm really not aware of what Bradley Manning did release or hand over from his classified position. I imagine that he was breaking the law. I view WikiLeaks as the messenger. I don't view them as having committed anything criminal. And I'm also believing that WikiLeaks has not released anything that has resulted in bodily harm, if you will, to anyone in any of these reports. But I think more than anything, what WikiLeaks did is it just bore out all of our beliefs about the way that foreign policy was being conducted, and it's like the analogy for making sausage. Gee, if you really saw how sausage was made, would you eat it? Niles, you're up.
Hello, Governor. I realize this may be more of a states' right issue, but what are your positions on prostitution? Like with Nevada, like do you think they have the right idea by allowing brothels, like legal brothels, to be set up and allowing those girls to get tested, and then being able to provide services such as sexual favors in exchange for money?
Niles, Nevada has clearly established this as a state's issue, given that prostitution is legal in one state, Nevada, and I realize that there are some caveats that go along with it being legal in Nevada that I'm not totally up to speed on. But what I've always said is that, first of all, I've never engaged the services of a prostitute. I have no intention of doing it. But if I were to do that, right, where would I want to engage those services? Would I want to engage those services in a state where it was legal and where the women were being tested so that there wouldn't be potentially sexually transmitted diseases? Well, I think it's a no-brainer question. Yes, you would choose to engage that in a state where it was controlled and regulated. So Nevada has established this nationally. It is a state issue because of what Nevada has done. And if you're an individual that engages the services of prostitution, Nevada is the place to do it because it's legal, it's controlled, it's regulated. I think we can make a lot of corollary views on different topics just on this one.
The main reason why I was asking is because I actually I know a friend that works in that industry, and that's one thing that she's always complained about is most of the laws in this country are very against it. And she always complains and says like other countries, like they actually, the ones that control it, like like the girls are tested, the clients are tested. So like she's always complained about that. So I was just kind of wondering like what your views would be, and do you think that maybe like the federal government would ever step in, or would you say like leave it completely to the states?
I do think that all these issues should reside in the state, within the states. And when you have 50 laboratories of innovation and best practice, I think that's exactly what emerges. Right. And that if we would have more competition among states for or how we live our lives, if you will, that we would all benefit as a result of that, as opposed to Washington top-down, one-size-fits-all. Paul, you're up.
Who would be your vice president pick?
You know, that would be a great choice to have. I was asked in the Orlando debate, who of all the candidates on stage would I choose as my vice presidential candidate? And I thought that was a no-brainer. Of those candidates that were on stage, I would choose Ron Paul. Good problem to have. I hope to have that problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
Randall, we have corporate interests abroad, and because of the corporate interests abroad, how does this dictate the nation building that's going on with our military? Well, I think that's exactly what is dictating the nation building. I really get back to we shouldn't be nation building. We should be leading by example. I'm promising to submit a balanced budget to Congress in the year 2013. Now, that's not promising to balance the budget because I don't have control over that. That would be Congress. But I'm promising to submit a balanced budget, and that would include a 43% reduction in military spending, believing that we can provide a strong national defense for ourselves and still cut military spending by 43%, as opposed to what we're doing now, which is nation building and offense as opposed to defense. Look, we've got military in uniform. We have the support that goes along with that on the civilian side. That needs to be cut. Our nuclear warheads need to be cut from 2,300 to 500. We need to blow up the world 9 times, or it might 4 times do it. We need to get out of the conflicts that we're currently engaged in when it comes to research and development. We've been talking for decades about being smarter, and yet we continue, in my opinion, to roll out weapons that deal with the last war and not what's in the future. So military spending, we need to cut it by 43%, which if somebody's out there watching, listening, can clarify this, but I believe we would be taking military spending back to 2003 is all, by cutting military spending by 43%. Are there any Republicans running you feel are worse than Obama? Tonight we are talking about, I think we're talking about the notion of classical liberals. I'm a classical liberal. I believe in less government, period. And I think when it comes to government, and the best thing they can do for me as an individual is to empower me as an individual to make choices that only I should be making. So that those are lifestyle choices. Those are choices as to what I do or don't put in my own body. And so I think there are a lot of Republicans that have a social conservative agenda, that although I respect anybody with a social conservative agenda, I think the way that they positively affect other people is to live their lives by example. But if you're going to put that into government policy, I think you end up criminalizing a whole lot of activities that make us all criminal in some form or another. And so there are Republicans running that really are going to be looking at criminalizing, in my opinion, choices that shouldn't be criminal but should be personal choices. And that's not good.
I would just add to that that it does come down to a vision of government. There are many discussions that people, Americans, should be having in this country, moral issues, kitchen table issues, and they should take place at the kitchen tables in the communities. And we're talking about who the president of the United States is going to be. And the President Obama has a very big government vision of government. And I would hope that the Republican nominee has a limited vision of government, a pro-freedom vision of government.
Listen, I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. I believe we're going to end the broadcast this evening. Like I say, it's terrific that so many showed up, and look forward to doing this again. Jimmy, thank you very, very much for being a part of this.
Thank you very much, Governor. We'll see you on the trail, and folks who want to learn more about GoProud can go to goproud.org. Thanks a lot.
Incredible.